this video, we're going to be taking a look at the characteristics of life. These are going to be a list of 8 things that define whether or not a creature is alive or not. And I'm going to tell you why that's important. We're in a class called biology. Biology is a branch of science where we study living things. Ology means the study of, bio means living. So that's what we're doing in this class. We're going to be studying living things and even some of the non-living things that affect the living things. And an organism is a synonym for a living thing. So we don't have to keep saying living thing. We can just say organism whenever we want to talk about what we're studying here in biology. Here's a list of 8 criteria that a thing has to have about it for us to say it's alive. It's important in biology that we understand what is living and what is not. And that might sound kind of stupid, but if you think about it, if you try to explain to somebody what does it mean to be alive, it gets a little complicated. Because whatever you say has to apply to a bacteria, a plant, you, a mold. Everything we say is alive would have to have a group of similarities to it. So your book gives us 8 characteristics that'll serve as a checklist. None of them is more important than another one, but if we're evaluating whether something is alive, it has to have all 8 of these. So one of these 8 is made of cells. Living things have to be made of these smaller units called cells. When microscopes were first invented, people were starting to discover that there was these smaller units inside of a living thing that were living themselves, and that was cells. And it took a lot of convincing to convince people that you were made of these tiny microscopic units that were alive, and they had to stay healthy for you to stay healthy. So this is a definition of a cell, a collection of living matter enclosed by a barrier. That barrier is called the cell membrane that separates a cell from its surroundings. We're going to study cells quite a bit this year just because they are what makes all living things. The creatures you see here pictured are bacteria. They are unicellular. In the top picture, that is one bacterial cell, and that's that creature's whole body. And down below, we see some circular bacteria, and each circle is one cell of one bacteria. We are not unicellular, we are multicellular. That means we're made of more than one cell. But to be alive, you must be made of cells. Living things must be able to reproduce. That's how more living things come about. You guys have a definition from the other day called spontaneous generation. In that definition, it's a wrong idea that people used to have that living things could come about from a non-living source. That's just a wrong idea. The only way you get new living things is from the living things that are already there. So reproduction is the process by which new organisms are produced by the organisms that are there. And there's 2 types of reproduction. There's sexual reproduction and there's asexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction is where you have 2 parents of opposite gender. One's providing a sperm cell, one's providing an egg cell. Those 2 reproductive cells join to make the first cell of a new organism. That'd be called a fertilized egg. Asexual reproduction means not sexual reproduction. Some creatures can do this where they just make a copy of themselves, essentially. They're making clones of themselves. Sexual reproduction has the advantage that you're making a new variety of an organism. Like, you are not a clone of your mom or of your dad. You have some similarities and differences between the 2 of them. With asexual reproduction, that's not the case. Asexual reproduction, the offspring that are made are exact replicas of the parent. Now, if I go too fast and you're writing things down, just pause it until you get the definitions, or rewind it and then play it once you're ready. Another criteria that all living things must have about themselves is they must be based on a genetic code. The genetic code is almost always DNA. And this is what the sperm cell carries. This is what the egg cell carries. It's carrying half of the genetic code to make that new organism. So mom gave you half of your DNA, dad gave you half of your DNA, and that built you. So all living things are based on a genetic code. Growth and development, all living things need to do this. These 2 words are used at the same time most of the time, but there is a difference between them. Growth just means the process of getting bigger. So if you make a snowball, you're making your snowball bigger as you roll it around in the yard. It's growing. It is not developing. Developing means becoming more complicated. Your snowball is not getting any more complicated. It's just a bunch of snowflakes all squished together. Doesn't matter if you could throw it or you have to roll it. It's developmentally the same exact thing. But we develop since the time we were babies till now. You have grown and developed. When you were 2 years old, you could not hold a pencil and write down these notes. Your brain wasn't developed enough, your muscles weren't developed enough. But now you can because you've gone through this process of becoming more complicated. So living things must grow and must develop at some point during their lives. Think about your radish seeds. They grew and developed. They started as a little tiny seed, looked like a little brown BB. You planted it and it got bigger, it grew, and a stem started coming out, roots started coming out. Maybe some of you even saw little leaves at the top of the stem. That is a lot more developed than that little tiny seed. So you guys saw growth and development with your radish seed. Living things need materials and energy. We would say they need food, they need water, plants need light, plants need soil. That all goes underneath this heading, materials and energy. The vocab word that would help explain this is called metabolism. Metabolism is all the chemical reactions that are going on in your body. You have metabolism that breaks things down in your body, such as food that you eat. You also have metabolism that builds things up in your body, like developing new muscles or brain cells or things like that. That all goes into this heading of metabolism, and that helps to explain why we need materials and why we need energy. And we'll be learning about food chains this year, and we'll learn about how energy gets passed from one organism to another, how materials get passed from a plant to an animal to you. And this is a characteristic of all living things. They need materials, and we all need energy. All right, the sixth thing on our list. Remember, this isn't the sixth most important. It's just another thing. We have 8 total. Living things have to respond. Organisms have to be able to detect and respond to stimuli in their environment. A stimulus is the signal to which an organism responds, and the response is what the organism does once it's received a stimulus. Being animals, we sometimes automatically respond, like this picture shows, grabbing a hot pan. Sometimes we have to think about our response when we're detecting a stimulus. Something like a plant doesn't really have that thought process. So if you put a plant in your window, its roots are going to grow down towards gravity. Its leaves are going to grow towards the window, towards the light. It's responding to gravity. It's responding to sunlight. Plants make flowers at certain times. They're responding to temperature. They're responding to sunlight. So all living things have to respond to certain stimuli, not just the way that humans do. Bacteria, if you get strep throat bacteria in the back of your throat, they're going to respond to the stimulus of being at 98.6 degrees and having your cells as a food source. They're going to respond by reproducing, growing, and they're going to cause you to be ill. So not everything responds the way a human does, but living things have to respond to certain stimuli. This one's a little tough to understand until I give you some examples. But living things must maintain an internal environment. The word for this is homeostasis. And you're doing this right now. Inside your body, there are conditions that need to be kept the same. If they are not kept the same, we would say that you're ill or you're sick. Something's going on. So our body is constantly maintaining homeostasis. Let me give you some examples, and this will become really clear to you. Whenever you go to the doctor, no matter what you go to the doctor for, it could be a sprained ankle, it could be a physical, it could be, you're got some kind of an ear infection. The doctor or the nurse is always going to check out a few things with you no matter what you're there for. Let me put a few of these down for you. They're always going to put that blood pressure cuff on you and check your blood pressure. They always check your temperature. They're always going to check your heart rate by feeling right down there on the inside of your wrist. Those are indicators of your homeostasis. If your body temperature goes up to 100 degrees, you all know that's an indicator that there's something wrong with you. You have some kind of an infection, your body's producing a fever. Same thing with blood pressure. If your blood pressure is too low or too high, those are indicators that there's something going on and your body is unable to maintain its homeostasis the way that it should. Heart rate's the same way. Sitting there in your seats right now, taking these notes and listening, your heart should not be racing unless you're really nervous about something. So, if you're nervous or if you get up and do some exercise, your heart rate should speed up, but then it should come back down again. Those are examples of homeostasis. Have you ever had blood work done? The doctor is getting a check on certain levels of things in your blood to make sure they're where they should be, whether it's your white blood cell count, your iron, things like that, trying to get an idea of your homeostasis to figure out why you're at the doctor. So our body puts an awful lot of work into maintaining these internal environments, and it's important that they're kept stable. And here's our last one. Not that it's any less important, it's just the last one on our list. Evolution. Evolution is a change in a kind of organism over time. You are not going to evolve. Individuals do not evolve. But groups of individuals over time can evolve. And we're going to learn about this in the springtime. This could take hundreds of years, thousands of years, some may say millions to billions of years. A good example of this is dogs were domesticated from wolves. People domesticated some wolves at some point and then bred them in certain ways to get those wolves or dogs to be able to be very good at certain things. So dogs have evolved from wolves. It was a change in a kind of wolf over time. And now we have Chihuahuas and German Shepherds and St. Bernards, and we have all these different kinds of dogs. They all evolved from wolves. Okay, those are the 8 characteristics that we need to understand to know if something is alive or not. We'll practice this a little bit next class. And remember, it's a checklist. It has to have all 8, not 7, not the ones that you feel are most important, but all 8 must be present for an organism, or for something to be called an organism, for something to be said to be alive. And please use this information to finish up those analysis questions on your lab. Again, feel free to rewind, pause, watch it again. You need all the definitions. You need all the information in the slides here.